Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White's Sports Performance Center, Athletes Made Here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Taylor Raglin and Devin Hasson. Gentlemen, week one of high school football season is here, and after spending the past month previewing all of our districts, we get a chance to talk about the actual games themselves. And obviously, as we did last year, that means starting with our reader-voted game of the week. First off, thank you to everybody for going to the website, starlocalmedia.com, and voting among the 5 nominees. Not a whole lot of debate among the readers, at least, as far as what the biggest game is on our local coverage docket. Allen and Cedar Hill. It's one of the more high-profile games in the state, period, albeit not necessarily the game that we as a staff anticipated being voted game of the week, just because we hold Sachse to the highest possible standard. I don't know, Devin, did Sachse just graduate all of its football fans? Because the poll is not exactly what we're used to seeing out of Sachse.
Their voting prowess is pretty much unmatched in our coverage area.
I don't think they've ever lost.
I know. They entered the year undefeated in terms of online polls as far as our game of the week is concerned. But maybe it's just the first week. Maybe they haven't gotten the word out.
Everybody's still in preseason mode, even the Sachse fans.
So, but yeah, in-house, I think we thought that Sachse and Coppell would get the nod. Not that Coppell doesn't have voters itself, but the Sachse online contingent is a strong and vocal one. They're a lot of fun to read about what they did. But maybe they'll wake up next week and we'll see what happens in the future weeks.
There's nothing more vocal than a mad Allen fan, and I think with some of the rankings that have come out and some of the talk around this game and just some of the chatter around Allen in general, maybe there's a even bigger chip on the shoulder of the Allen faithful than normal.
They were pushing that vote button extra hard this time around. So but nevertheless, though, no one's gonna balk at the idea of Allen versus Cedar Hill being named our game of the week. No. I mean, it's two of, at least within the Metroplex, two of the kind of the legacy programs in recent memory. I mean, they've got a combined 6 state championships between them since 2012. They're programs that, if you're just looking again at the 6A level, you have like Allen, DeSoto, Southlake, Cedar Hill. Those are probably your 4, your Mount Rushmore of Dallas area high school programs just within the last decade or so.
And somewhat new guard. When you talk about traditional powers, we were talking about Katie off camera here. Katie's been good for so many years. People just, more recent, they think Allen and Cedar Hill. I mean, those are 2 of the first programs that popped to mind, but they're really 2 programs that have built themselves up for the last 15 years into the powerhouses they are, because they're not, even though they've been around a while, they're not traditional powers. And
they're certainly no strangers to one another on the football field, specifically under the pretense of Friday's game, which is part of the headliner for the 20th annual Tom Landry Classic, a game that has been attached to Allen for quite some time. Obviously, it taking place at Eagles Stadium is a big reason why, but this is actually the 13th appearance for Allen in the Tom Landry Classic, and they've traditionally fared very well in this game. They're 12-1 overall in the Landry Classic, and that includes 3 wins over Cedar Hill. The most recent being 2 years ago in 2017. They won 23-8 in what was the first game for the Longhorns under their current head coach, Carlos Lynn. I was at that game, and you could kind of see in the, Cedar Hill looked like a team that was very much acclimating to just a brand new head coach, just a lot of newness around that that program at the time. And, I just remember a lot of executional lapses on Cedar Hill's end that Allen was able to capitalize on. Granted, this is the first game of the season. There's going to be that sort of stuff all over the place. But nevertheless, you look at like last season between these two teams, and two teams that look like they were primed for big runs. You look at, but at the same time, teams that probably ended the season with a bit of a sour taste in their mouths. Obviously, Allen, anything less than a state championship is considered just not up to par. So them going to the state semifinals, albeit for the 7th consecutive year, certainly them falling short against Duncanville, they have not forgot about that one. And then you got a team like Cedar Hill, which I had to go back and check. Like, I completely forgot just what a tear Cedar Hill began last season on. Some of the results that they racked up. They started the year with a 57-7 win over John Tyler.
Yeah.
And you look at what John Tyler wound up doing in 5A, going 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. Cedar Hill just came out guns blazing to start the season. Very next week, they shut out Denton Guyer 28-0. They won their first 5 games by at least 17 points, and then they had a weird 7-3 loss to Mansfield Summit, again. One of the more just goofy results that you'll see all season. And then the big thing about Cedar Hill was, the explosiveness of that offense. The big plays that they're capable of rattling off. I went back through and checked. They had 20 touchdowns of at least 30 yards last season, a ton. And a lot of ones, I'm talking 99-yard touchdowns, 85-yard touchdowns. They could score in the blink of an eye. But you saw as the season went along, that explosiveness kind of was subdued a bit. They only had one of those touchdowns of at least 30 yards over their last 4 games. They averaged only 21.3 points per game over the last 4, culminating in one of the more shocking results of the entire season, a 23-21 first-round playoff loss to a fairly unheralded Richardson Pierce squad, the 4th-place finisher out of 8-6A. So a Cedar Hill team that certainly feels like they left a little bit of meat on the bone last season, and they get a chance to make a statement to start the season, as does Allen. Allen's going to be breaking in a tons of new faces in all sorts of integral places. So let's kind of just take a look at what each of these teams is bringing to the table from a personnel standpoint. Starting with Cedar Hill. We talked last week about Allen extensively in our District 9-6A preview. They get tons of love on this podcast. So let's talk about the team that folks are probably a bit less familiar with as far as what Cedar Hill brings back. It all starts with Quinn Bright, the Texas Tech commit. Their all-purpose athlete. They use him all over the place. I went back and just was watching some highlight tape just to see, not so much, you expect you're going to see some great plays from him, but more so just how he was being used last season as far as maybe an indication of what's to be expected. There is not a spot on that offense where he didn't line up, it seems. He was scoring touchdowns, running the ball out of the backfield as a running back, going deep as a wide receiver out of the backfield. They line him up on the outside. They line him up on the inside. They even line him up near the goal line as a wildcat quarterback a couple times that I saw. He is a Swiss Army knife of the highest order. He, let's see, as far as stats go, he totaled 755 yards of offense, 9 touchdowns. He split that production almost entirely between, not entirely, but right down the middle between rushing and receiving. He is a threat in every conceivable way for the Allen defense to be wise from. And you look in the backfield, they got some experience there with Christian Hallman, who was their 2nd leading rusher last season. The offensive line has one of the state's top offensive tackles in Cortland Ford, an LSU commit who is 6'6", 305 pounds. He's built like a Game of Thrones character. And then you have, at the quarterback spot, they graduated their starter from last season, but they're not going to be lacking in experience there. They bring over Caden Salter, who transfers in from Bishop Lynch, and he led the Friars to a state runner-up finish last year at the private school level. Let's see. Otherwise, defensively, you talk about Cedar Hill, and it's talent at all 3 levels on defense and a lot of college level prospects. Up front, whether it's Matthew Arabasala and Leon Young, the secondary has 2-3 guys that are going to be playing Division I football most likely at some point between Brett Lynch, Jalen Peoples, Kevin Young. There's really not a whole lot of just a defined flaws within this Cedar Hill bunch. Certainly to begin the season, one of the more well-rounded teams that Allen has ever seen.
Yeah, well, and I think that it just speaks to the caliber of the program. Oh, yeah. Like you were talking talking about. It's the same kind of thought that we have about Allen as far as, there's all this turnover and people are kind of doubting what Allen's going to look like, and they're breaking in so many different faces, and the offensive line is going to be totally new, but it's Allen.
Mm-hmm.
These programs that have established themselves as these perennial contenders and these top dogs, and the turnover is negligible because they just keep reloading, and they bring in guys like Salter. Last year, a perfectly respectable season, 1,200 yards, almost 300 yards on the ground, and that's with a private school.
Mm-hmm.
That's with Bishop Lynch.
A run-heavy offense.
Yeah, and an offense that's not really built for that. So you bring him into, you talk about Quinn Bright and all the other talent, around him at Cedar Hill. He's the kind of player that you can plug into a team like that and maybe utilize him in a different way. And I think he's a real candidate for a breakout year. So, yeah, I mean,
I'm curious to see how Cedar Hill comes out. I mean, you mentioned their hot start last year. I don't really picture them as a hot starting team because there's been several years where you look in week 8, week 9, and there's scenarios where they don't even make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Now, they always find a way, and a lot of times they make deep runs, sometimes winning a state title with 3 or 4 losses. So I always kind of looked at them as a team that kind of blossoms late in the year, gains momentum, and is ready to go by the time the playoffs roll around. Obviously, if they can get out to the same kind of start they did last year against John Tyler, it's going to be a great game. You wonder what kind of chip they have on their shoulder, not just losing to Pierce in their last outing, but just the fact that Allen's had their number over the years. So, that's going to be I think it's going to be, obviously it's our game of the week, but outside of, there's so many great games with Katy and Galena Park North Shore, and you look around the state, but this is a top 5 game in the state without a doubt.
I want to build off what you said about Salter because it is valuable experience, though, what he went through at the private school level last year. Because even though it's not necessarily the same as like the 6A athletes that he's going to be going against, the Dallas area is far and away the most talented region in the state as far as private school football goes. So to lead Bishop Lynch to the state title game when they lost to their rival Bishop Dunn, you're going through. A talent level that is a bit more. The drop off is not going to be that drastic from what he's going to be seeing this season.
And postseason experience is postseason experience. It's at the private school level, but having to kind of fight through that style of tournament and, like you said, play those kinds of teams week after week, and it's what you ideally are going to be doing at Cedar Hill. That's the game plan, and the objective for Cedar Hill every year is to go 3, 4, 5 rounds deep, maybe to the state title game or whatever. So it's not like he's coming in as this kind of green junior without a ton of experience for sure.
Allen's also got some experience on this side of the quarterback position, despite the fact that this player did not start for them last season. But I'm not sure how many backup quarterbacks in the state period had the kind of numbers that Raylan Sharp did. Again, despite not starting a game, he totaled 1,200 yards of offense and 16 touchdowns exclusively as a backup. Within that, that's numbers like averaging 14 yards per carry on the ground. Now, granted, these were against second-team units most of the time. Cedar Hill is a far cry from that, to say the least.
Well, but probably basic play calling too. They're not opening up the playbook when he's in the game. So,
but then you look elsewhere around that offense, and guys like Selden Manning, who actually played in this game 2 years ago as only a sophomore. He was a slot receiver for Allen at the time. Then he's going to be leading the backfield at running back. He went for 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns last season. Wide receivers, as vaunted a 1-2 punch as it gets in the state. The twin terrors on the outside of Blaine and Bryson Green, both of them 6'1", 200 pounds, just absolute wrecking balls and physicality, and they both have nearly 20 Division I offers to their names. You mentioned the offensive line, and that's that is right at the center of kind of where my eyes are going to be drifting towards most for tomorrow night. Is I just want to see this new look Allen offensive line replacing 5 starters from last season, and just how it looks against what is probably going to be one of the more athletic and talented defensive fronts that they're going to see all season. And the same thing kind of applies on the defensive side of the ball, where they return only 1 starter, linebacker Jaden Healy, but that is partially mitigated just because they did have several guys that played extensive snaps, because Allen's defensive line rotates so frequently. So you still had guys like Cole Latos, Michael Owens-Zerke, who played at least 275 snaps this season. So
Allen has depth. Allen of all schools.
Imagine, I know, what a concept. Beyond that, it's the secondary is going to be brand new as well. Guys like Zatik McGee, Will Drogosh, guys that are going to be really tasked with having to subdue a Cedar Hill offense that is going to give them one of the more unique tests that they're going to see right out of the gate. Because that was what head coach Terry Gamble mentioned right out of the chute, is just lauding that Cedar Hill athleticism and the big playability, and just stressing the need to you cannot have mental busts in coverage. You've got to tackle well, just because against teams like Cedar Hill that can turn a 7-yard play into a 45-yarder just like that. It reduces your margin for error when you have an offense that has the athletes like Cedar Hill that are so prone to just breaking any play open. So that's, as far as just kind of matchups to watch in this thing, I mentioned the line of scrimmage. I'm fascinated to see how Allen's offensive line holds up, just because, and what that means for a guy like Raylan Sharp, because this is going to be the first time, his first ever varsity start. The workload that he's going to see is unlike anything that he's ever had on his plate, and he's going to be seeing a defensive front that is way more talented than anything that he's gone against. Again, he's fast. He's really fast. He is a star on the track team. He's he brings more speed to the position than any quarterback that Allen has had since Kyler Murray. And I think that speed's, despite his inexperience at the position, I think that speed's going to translate. It's more so kind of through the air, or kind of more in a wait and see approach and how he looks having to throw the ball 15 to 20 times per game. But Coach Gamble talked a lot about just with the offense period, just kind of staying within your specific role, not trying to do too much, especially early in the season. Is there's still these guys are still getting used to each other in a sense. Like, there's so much newness, so many new faces within these positions. So what you see on Friday is far from the finished product on either side. But I don't know. I'm excited to see how it works out. The other matchup to watch, we don't want to leave that out. Just again, the Green Twins and just the talent that they bring to the table going up against that Cedar Hill secondary. You're going to have moments where there's 4 or 5 different Division I prospects battling out just between those two positional groups alone. It should be a fun one. Where are you guys leaning as far as a prediction goes for this game, though?
Never picking against Allen, the Tom Landry Classic.
Yeah, just at home in general.
Yeah.
It's Allen. I don't think it's going to be a 21, 28, 35 point blowout. Obviously, I think that this is a year where these two teams are going to be tight. I think it's going to be a competitive football game, but Allen by, 10, 14 probably, something like that.
I think with the system, and again, there's a lot of 6A programs that have depth, but who rivals Allen in terms of just the sheer number of players and the sheer number of players they can rotate out? Yeah. And just the quality on and down when you talk about not just the varsity, but through the JV and through the freshmen. So programs like that are more well equipped to hit the ground running week 1, week 2. Whereas, I'm not saying Cedar Hill can't, like they did last year against the great John Tyler team. Yeah. You're just more inclined to say, I know Allen's going to be there. They're going to be prepared. They got their system. They know what they're going to come out and do, as opposed to a Cedar Hill team that, albeit we don't know as much about on our end from a coverage standpoint. It's just Allen's at home, and they've proven it time and time again.
Yeah, despite Allen's inexperience on defense, they've been through this before. They tend to graduate large senior classes on that side of the ball more often than not, and that is always, just thinking back to over the years, covering Allen's season opener over the years, that unit always looks like it's in midseason form. They always come out a bit further ahead, and that's just a testament to defensive coordinator Corey Keene and his staff and the job that they do getting these kids acclimated, because it's a team that does not take too long to get its feet wet. And then you look at just basic numbers, like Allen hasn't lost a regular season game since 2012. They've never lost in Eagle Stadium, and yes, their track record in the Landry Classic, including against Cedar Hill. It's one of those teams that there just isn't enough tangible evidence to really ever pick against them at this juncture of the season. Now, we'll see. Cedar Hill is a bit better than most of the teams that Allen traditionally opens up against. I think this will be a closer one. I picked Allen by 8 as my final margin, but and it was a clean sweep for Allen on the picket line. So yes, we are all in unison in thinking that Allen begins the season on a 1-0 note. And that was our game of the week. We've still got 4 others on the docket, and let's see. We will pick that up in just a moment after a word from the sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. We are out here at Allen High School talking with Elijah Fisher, defensive lineman for the Allen Eagles. Allen kicks off its season Friday, 7 o'clock out here at Eagle Stadium against Cedar Hill, part of the Tom Landry Classic. Elijah, thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, it is. We're recording this on Wednesday, so the kickoff is a little over 48 hours away. Just what is the energy been like around the program this week, and just how excited is everybody for that first game to almost be here?
Yeah, like you said, excited. We're all excited. We're excited to hit different guys. We've been going squad on squad, so we get a little bit of taste of Friday Night Lights. So.
Now, I know you guys have been going through this off season, I guess, without as much experience as you guys have had than usual. So, what has that kind of been like? I mean, with the time that you've been around this program, what has it been like working with a few more new faces than usual during the off season?
A lot of the underclassmen stepped up, and a big thing about having that is leadership. It's a big thing. Senior leadership starts with the captains, goes to our leadership council, and filters down through that. But big thing is leadership.
Just talk a bit about, I guess, your role specifically. How has that kind of grown this season compared to where you were at this time last year?
I would say it's like more of a leadership role. I mean, guys last year looked up to me, felt I held my own and led the team as a junior. But now that I'm kind of captain the ship is an odd way to put it, but that's a good analogy.
Now you're moving positional change this year. You're moving from you were an all-district selection at tight end last year, and you're moving to the defensive line this season. Talk a bit about what that transition has been like.
It's been great. The coaches here are great, man. I had nothing but great things to say about them. Make it easy, and if they feel I can help on the defensive side of the ball, I'll play it.
Now it means fans won't be able to see a number 95 catching passes anymore, which I'm not gonna lie, in hindsight, a little unstable.
Yeah.
So I mean, did you begin last season, I guess, with the expectation that you were going to play defense? Is that why you wore the 95? People don't normally associate that with the defensive lineman. Just talk a bit about wearing 95 while playing offense last year.
Well, it just kind of, when we went through spring ball, they asked me, hey, do you want to change your number? And I was like, yeah, let's try it, because I was going to play defensive tackle, but I ended up back on offense, so I just kind of stuck. And 95, I liked how they looked on me. So
right on. Now, now the defensive line, another group that lost a lot of guys to graduation. Some big ones, Jaden Jernigan, Seth Mason, and whatnot. So just kind of talk a bit about kind of how that positional group has been coming along and how you guys are feeling about it.
I say we feel very comfortable. We got Michael Anzarike. He's a great cat at D-tackle. He played a bunch last year. Cole Latos, he actually played defensive end last year. He's at D-tackle too, and Malik Allen, man, he's like my partner, Cronus, and the guy on the other side, defensive end. It's great, man. We're having great chemistry, and like you said, the older guys, we look up to them. We watch their film, like Emmanuel Nakori. I watch a bunch of his hand placement film and how he gets off the ball. So I mean, they've been great as a way to look up to.
Now, looking ahead to this game on Friday, it's part of the Tom Landry Classic, and this is the 20th year of the Tom Landry Classic. It's a game that's been associated quite a bit with Allen over the years, obviously taking place here at Eagle Stadium, and you guys have played in this game a ton. So, what does it mean just to have your program so associated with an event like this?
Tom Landry Classic, man. Since I've moved here in 8th grade, they've been great, man. They pull the best crowds. We have the best games. I met Tom one time. He was or his son, I think, or maybe one of them. But he was great, man. And it's great to win, and we expect to win every year. So.
I mean, you got a good one on Friday. Cedar Hill. It's Cedar Hill and Allen, two of the more storied programs in Texas over the last decade. So, just talk a bit about what you're expecting out of Cedar Hill, and what's the initial read on what they bring to the table. We know they have a great athletic offense. The left tackle for them, 4-star, he's well known around the country. Decommitted from LSU, the whole nine. Their quarterback's super athletic. He likes to run a lot. So I mean, for us, our defensive plan is basically catered to that, and we expect to have a great game with them guys. So before I let you go, I'm just kind of lay out some keys to victory, and what is it going to take for Allen to begin the season 1-0?
Most of it is stay grounded, play fast, play physical, no mistakes, no mental errors, and just stay focused, man. We have 2 more practices this week, then it's game day, so especially today and tomorrow, we definitely want to stay focused here and get ready to play.
Awesome, Elijah. Well, that is all I had for you, man. Once again, Friday, 7 o'clock, out here at Eagle Stadium in Allen. Allen versus Cedar Hill, Tom Landry Classic. Ought to be a fun one. Elijah, best of luck to you and the rest of the team preparing for the game, and thanks for taking the time to chat for the podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much.
And we are back. We just finished talking extensively about our game of the week for week 1 of high school football season, Allen versus Cedar Hill. We had 4 other games that were up for consideration, though, and we can quick hit those, give our initial thoughts and some predictions on where we see those games shaking out. Devin, you got a couple in your neck of the woods, including the game that you're going to be at on Friday. It was a heck of a game last year, one of the better games appeared in our coverage area. Sachse and Coppell.
Their first ever meeting last year was one to remember. Obviously came down to the wire with Miles Nash scoring, I believe, 21 seconds left to give them a lead. And when you score 21 seconds left, you think we've got this, but not when Caden Davis plays for the other team, the outstanding Coppell kicker, who's A&M bound, signed with A&M. He kicks a 57-yarder as time expires to win at 30-28. So can we expect similar fireworks, similar dramatics? Possibly. But it's going to be with some new faces, I guess, on both sides. Sachse just doesn't have the star power at the skill positions yet that we're accustomed to. I mean, they've been rolling out Division I quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers for the last several years, and they may still have that in their arsenal. It's just really uncertain right now. They will be breaking in a new quarterback, Xavier Foreman. Parker Wells both got kind of dipped their toe in the water last year before Derrick Rose took over. They're both going to get a look at quarterback. They thought they had their go-to running back in Miles Nash, who transferred this summer to Fort Worth Southwest Christian. So we'll see how they handle the running back situation. They have been one of those groups that has gone by committee in years past. That may pay dividends with a guy like Sean Coleman, who didn't get experience last year. Again, question marks at the wide receiver. They don't know who their go-to guy is there. They do have the luxury of having 3 returners back on the offensive line, so that'll help them. Same way defensively. They've got some nice players, some nice, on the line. The front 7, I think, is going to be really good. Secondary is a little bit inexperienced. Going against, a Coppell team that kind of, they returned their quarterback, Drew Cerniglia. Is that how you pronounce it?
Actually, he transferred to Allen.
Okay, he's at Allen now.
Really?
They have.
Then I take that back.
They bring back. Why would they
transfer to Allen?
They have Kevin Schumann now.
Kevin Schumann, the Jesuit quarterback.
Who was the Jesuit quarterback.
Okay, well, rotating doors on that side of things. So this is why.
Coppell was very in flux as far as they had 3 of the of what was projected to be the 3 best players perhaps were coming back on the offense have all transferred, with Cerniglia at Allen, KJ Liggins, the star receiver, he is at Denton Guy.
Yeah, I knew Liggins was gone.
And then their stud offensive lineman, Garrison Wheatley, he is out in Virginia.
Okay, and they already graduated Ryan Hurt.
Yes.
So yeah, there's just a lot of questions all around on as far as Coppell is concerned. Both teams. I think this is going to be one of those true week 1 games where it's a little. a lot of times you'll see it'll get sloppy, turnovers, penalties. That's just routine for any program, but especially one with both sides breaking in as many new players as they are.
This game is Friday, 7 o'clock out at Williams Stadium in Garland. The picket line was unanimous in thinking this is going to be a reversal of fortunes this time around.
And I was really surprised about that. I just figured, not that I don't think Sachse could win. Obviously, I picked Sachse to win, but it was one of those I didn't just immediately go down and jot down Sachse. I thought about it, and because again, Sachse has a lot more question marks than they've had in recent years.
Ditto for Coppell, and but yes, nevertheless, the picket line was unanimous in thinking Sachse is going to return the favor and defeat Coppell on Friday. Let's see, another game. We get the latest chapter in the McKinney versus McKinney North rivalry. This game Friday, 7 o'clock out at McKinney ISD Stadium. This was the first game that kicked off the opening of the stadium last season with North defeating the Lions. A bit of a different pretense heading into this season, with McKinney being in its second year under head coach Marcus Shavers, mounting that impressive late season charge where they overcame an 0-5 start and still managed to make the playoffs. With North, it's I'm fascinated just to see how that offense shakes out against what should be a fairly stout McKinney defense. With Dylan Markowitz, who's in his first full year as their starting quarterback. He split time with Cam Constantine over the years. Running back Manny Fincher is the latest, and you talk about programs that have a storied lineage at a certain position. McKinney North is always cranking out good running backs. And then Brandon Frazier, one of the top tight ends in the state, one of the top tight ends in the country for that matter. And just McKinney's defense was so central to the job they did turning the thing around last year. They're led up front by Mitchell Tyler, committed to Baylor. I'm just curious to see how McKinney's running back situation shakes out. It sounds like there are 2-3 names in the mix there, which is such a departure from years years past when they've had that workhorse feature back that was almost a shoo-in to be among the top 2-3 area rushing leaders, and especially how that shakes out against a North defense that's been a little bit susceptible over the years. Ultimately, though, I end up siding with North on this one, with, again, just still kind of in wait-and-see mode on that McKinney offense. And I was not alone. Let's see, the picket line went, it was 5-1, or 4-1, I should say. We only have 5 people on the picket line this year, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Justin Thomas. Let's see, 4-1 in favor of McKinney North. Brian Murphy, the lone backer for the McKinney Lions. Devin, Taylor, myself, and Kendrick all riding with the Bulldogs.
I think, and if you were going from a momentum standpoint, at the way McKinney ended last season, then you would certainly go with that. I'm just not. Again, I think they have some holes that need to be filled. And, I mean, you talk about having Dylan Markowitz back, but some of the coaches in Mesquite ISD that I talked to last year were talking about Manny Fincher and how impressed they were with him, even in limited snaps last year. You talk about the lineage of running backs. I think he's maybe the next breakout guy that you see come through 5A from a program that seems to have a tendency to produce them. So I think it's going to be high scoring. I mean, all McKinney North games are high scoring, it seems like. But it was, that was the way I lean that way.
Yeah, Kendrick Johnson just did a feature last week on Manny Fincher, and it does sound like that is kind of a program-wide sentiment that this kid is very much ready to take off. Should be interesting to see how that shakes out, because McKinney's got talent on defense, so it should be easier said than done. Let's see. Elsewhere, we have Plano versus Hebron, 2 teams that are no stranger to each other at this time of the year. Let's see. Plano versus Hebron. This one is Friday, 7 o'clock, out at Hawk Stadium. This is the 12th consecutive year that Plano and Hebron have played each other, and they have not been in the same district during that span. I went back through, and outside of Plano East, Plano West, and Allen, those are the only other teams that have played Plano 12 consecutive years during that span, and they have shared the same district with the Wildcats. So certainly a special little sentiment between the Wildcats and the Hawks as far as a familiarity, to keep this rivalry going for as long as they have, despite not being in the same district. This has been such a tough game to pick over the years. Yeah. You were talking about it earlier.
Even when it doesn't seem like it. Right. I think that's the weirdest probably thing about it. It's 6-5 Plano, so the series history doesn't help you at all. Yeah. And then it seems like every time there's clearly this team is the better football team. It doesn't matter. 6 of the 11 have been decided by a touchdown or less. So that doesn't matter. It just seems like it always comes down to the final play. The last 2 were by a point.
Yep.
And sometimes it has no bearing on the rest of the season. Yeah. In fact, you'll see the winner of this game kind of go into a tailspin late, and the loser of this game will end up going 3-4 rounds deep in the playoffs.
It's like last year, Hebron got them 28-27, I think was the final score. And that gives you hope if you're a Plano fan, because you're like, wow, Hebron, with what they had and kind of the outlook, I guess, for that season, you guys were competitive. It was going to be an up and down year. And then Plano kind of just, fades into obscurity a little bit. And Hebron goes and, does what Hebron does. But, I get the same feeling this year, that Hebron, I think, is far and away, probably going to have the more successful overall season. I think it's set up for more success, but question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Plano's played above his head in this matchup, and it's one where I would say on both sides, just do not overreact to the outcome of this game, just because history says this game is not exactly a harbinger of things to come for either of these teams. As far as, though, if we're just simply going to pick a winner and a loser, one thing about last year's game that is worth mentioning, because you can't leave it out, Carson Harris, the quarterback, did not play in this game. He was held out of the season opener. He would go on to amass one of the more impressive dual threat campaigns of any quarterback in the area. He's back, and they've got just all sorts of talent everywhere on the roster. It's insane how good that team looks on paper. I'm just really high on Hebron. I said as much, picking them to win the district on Monday's podcast. I'm not about to then pick them to lose their first game of the season, even though it's against one of the teams that I cover. So I got to go with my brain on this one. So I pick Hebron to win, and so did everybody else. The staff was unanimous in picking Hebron to beat Plano. Time will tell if we will regret that decision.
So congratulations, Wildcats.
29-28 Plano.
All right, so let's round this out then with a look at one of the bigger games in the 5A area, a game that resonates in your neck of the woods, Devin. Denton Ryan against Poteet, and this one is Friday, 7 at C.H. Collins?
Yes,
correct. I should have that written down so I'm not having to say it like I'm Ron Burgundy. So let's see. Poteet gets a chance to take down one of the premier juggernauts in 5A. So just talk a bit about this matchup and where you're leaning.
Yeah, as far as teams in our coverage area, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that faces a bigger challenge than Denton Ryan. Is ranked number 2 in the state. Back-to-back 14-1 seasons that have ended with their lone loss in the state semifinals to Highland Park. And when you just look at what they bring back so much Division I talent. I mean, it's just when you got your quarterback Seth Hennigan, he threw for nearly 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, and he's not even the star of that offense because you got guys like Billy Bowman, Jatavian Sanders, Imani Bailey, who rushed for 1,284 yards last year, Drew Sanders, who was a superlative award winner in that district. All these guys are Division I prospects, basically, and that's just on offense, and not even getting into a solid offensive line. And defensively, Denton Ryan is always stout. They allowed just 14.9 points a game per game last year, and really the only team that got him was Highland Park, who scored 43. But who didn't Highland Park get with that machine? So it's obviously a tremendous challenge for Poteet. The Pirates in the Slash themselves, they returned Seth McGowan, one of the top running backs in the state, rushed for 1,600 yards, 25 touchdowns last year. Interesting to see Jalen Police slides into that starting quarterback role. So you never know how a guy who's going to handle his first start, especially against a defense that's going to keep you on the run like that. But he's a good athlete. He's a good basketball player. Had an impressive spring. He's got some talented wide receivers to throw to. He's got experienced offensive line, and defensively, I think Poteet has the ability to kind of contain those guys. You're not going to shut them down by any stretch of the imagination, but guys like Jalen Hodo, who's a playmaker in the secondary, he was the defensive player in the year in 7-5A Division I last season. Jonathan Cath, Jalen Updike, some of those linebackers. The line's in good shape. I mean, so Poteet has the personnel to certainly make it competitive. Whether it's enough to get past Denton Ryan, I don't know. I said earlier the big head-to-head matchup, the key matchup within the game is how that Denton Ryan front seven handles Seth McGowan. Last year they were able to do the job. He rushed for just 59 yards, no touchdowns. They loaded the box and made Poteet beat him through the air. But it was still a competitive game. Denton Ryan won 28-14. So they just kind of had a little bit too much firepower when it was all said and done, but Poteet hung right with them for 4 quarters. I know Poteet's a team in my coverage area, but it's so hard to go against Denton Ryan. They played 5 times in the last decade. Denton Ryan's won all 5. I did pick him to win again. Maybe that's motivation. You can Coach McLean, his first game.
Poteet, plenty of free bulletin board material.
Go ahead and throw it out there. Prove me wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong. I just think you're looking at a very similar game as to last season. The way Denton Ryan wins, by 10.
Yeah, I think there's just too much with Denton Ryan. Like you said, for as good as they've been, they may be the best they've been in the last several years this year, and true, state title aspirations bring everybody back. I think there's just too much.
Yep, and the staff agrees with both of you. It was unanimous picking Denton Ryan in a 5-0 sweep over Poteet. And that is a look at some of the marquee games in our coverage area. As far as games that we're actually going to be out and physically in press boxes and covering and whatnot, what is on y'all's schedule for these next couple days?
Oh man, I'll be everywhere.
You're busy.
Tonight, I'll be out at Pennington for Plano East LD Bell. Tomorrow, man, I don't even remember. Where am I going to be at Friday? Lake Dallas. Lake Dallas, Denton. And then Saturday for the back half, a lot of attention on the front half of the Tom Landry Classic with Allen and Cedar Hill, but a pretty good game Saturday with Lovejoy and Colleyville Heritage. I think, kind of one of the sneaky, more competitive games of week number 1. It should be a fun one, so.
Devin, how about you?
I had the odd scheduling quirk where I didn't have a Thursday game.
Wow, that is a rarity for you.
Considering all the teams out in my coverage area, but yeah, I'll be at Williams Stadium for the Sachse-Coppell rematch of that thriller from last year.
You mentioned the Tom Landry Classic, and I will be there for the front half of that on Friday, covering Allen Cedar Hill. Thursday, though, I'll get things started as far as I'll be out in Arlington covering Marcus and Bowie. Should be one of the better games in the area on Thursday night, as our Denton County papers are still in a bit of flux. So I'll be picking up duty covering Marcus and their season opener, a team that I am particularly high on. Just listen to Monday's podcast for that, and we'll see if they make me look like a chump early on or not. Let's see, and that'll do it for this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Everybody enjoy your first taste of high school football this season, be it Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. We'll be back on Monday to break down some takeaways from that very first week. In the meantime, folks, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.